I wanted to talk a little bit about vintage style because I get a lot of questions about it, and this is something that I've kind of held back from answering via video. I think I did a blog post about the evolution of my style, which I'll link below, but I have never really done a blog or a video entry about it because I felt like it was neither here nor there. But I've gotten so many questions that I feel like I'm going to just answer these questions kind of in one fell swoop. Most of the people who ask this question are wondering how I got into vintage style and whether or not I have always been into it. The answer is yes, I have always been enthusiastic about vintage style. I have always absolutely adored classic glamour from the 40s and 50s. I would say that the majority of my influence was the movies because 40s and 50s film is one of my main hobbies. But I haven't always dressed in a vintage style, and the reason that I haven't is because, for one thing, I was very swayed by trends. Secondly, I did not know that there were companies that made retro reproduction clothing, so I didn't even think it was an option. And thirdly, I didn't have the nerve. It's something that I just kind of gradually grew into. I realized after embracing the hair and makeup aspect that I wanted to also start to buy some of the clothing options that I saw online. And then I also decided that I was not happy wearing them only on special occasions and decided to start purchasing more items for everyday wear. But once again, I haven't always dressed in a vintage style. I've dressed, like I said, I went through a grunge phase, and I had huge hair in the 80s. I would say it was probably influenced a bit by Marilyn Monroe because it was bleached blonde, but other than that, I didn't look it. It was very trendy. There are people who have been, especially on the West Coast, who have been into the what they call the Rockabilly style for years and years and years. And I know that when people are relatively new to the scene, as they call it, sometimes they get some flack. I've seen it myself. If you want to embrace it when you are 50, embrace it when you're 50. Doesn't mean that you are less enthusiastic about it or that you love it less because you did not have the motivation to wear a 1950s dress or to wear 1940s hairstyling or to use pin curls before you reached a certain age. There are lots of labels when it comes to this whole scene and culture that can sometimes mean that people who embrace maybe a part of the culture, like rockabilly music or like custom cars, or pre-1960s automobiles, that they might be judged. There are a lot of people that get some flack because they don't dress vintage at Viva Las Vegas or something like that, and I think that's ridiculous. I don't think that the lady who's there wearing the Megadeth t-shirt and the acid wash jeans from the 80s can't possibly love the same things that I love. I've never felt that way. I think you should do whatever you feel comfortable with. I get at this question, though, a lot. How do I dress vintage every day? It's however you want to dress vintage every day. If you want to actually go to thrift stores, if you want to look online and find true vintage clothing for every single day wear, you want to go to the extent of trying to find beautiful vintage pieces to wear every day, then you do that. If you want to wear jeans and a t-shirt, but you still want to pin curl your hair and do your pin-up makeup, then you do that. Anything works with confidence. Anything. If you have the confidence to wear it, it will work. It will work because it will show how much you love it. And that is what's most important. This top that I'm wearing is from Ann Taylor. I liked it. I thought it had a classic style. Something that I feel like a lot of people don't understand is that if you look at photos of the 50s, the 40s, even the 30s, a lot of the pieces that you see, especially in separates, are tailored pieces. You can go to the Gap, Old Navy, Target, and find tailored pieces. A nice white crisp button-up top, a pencil skirt. You can find tailored pieces and then do your hair and makeup in your vintage style without having to go to a retro reproduction or a vintage clothing store to find it. So in answer to the question about me personally, I absolutely love vintage clothing. I love the cut of a true 1950s dress. I also really like pedal pushers and, you know, and things like that. I love high-waisted shorts with heels. I think that's a really, really cute look. Um, I personally really, really love classic things, tailored things, and then to pair them with maybe a really great pair of vintage styled shoes and a nice hairstyle and makeup. That's the type of thing that I do quite often, especially when I'm breastfeeding and I can't really afford to buy something that's only going to fit me for a short time. Um, when it comes to dresses, I might try to find a vintage dress, or I might just go online and find something that's vintage inspired or retro reproduction. I've seen really, really great vintage inspired clothing on Victoria's Secret. I've seen great vintage inspired swimsuits on Newport News. I just came from the doctor. And this is what I wore. Like I said, this is an Ann Taylor top. I'm wearing it with some like cigarette style pants and a pair of ballet flats. None of these things are vintage. They are all just kind of classically tailored items. I didn't even curl my hair today because I didn't last night and I didn't have time this morning. So, you know, I don't always curl my hair. I try to because I prefer it that way. But if I can't, then I love it when girls wear like you know, a tank top with a pencil skirt, or wear a really, really cute, you know, classic button-up shirt with jeans that are cuffed. You know, you don't have to follow any specific rules. I think that's most important. There are no rules. In the question, where do I wear my vintage clothing or my vintage styled clothing, I wear it anywhere and everywhere. I am not afraid to wear my nicer dresses to the grocery store. I wear my pearls to the grocery store sometimes. And then sometimes I just wear, you know, capris or pedal pushers and a tank top or a bandana. You know, it just depends on what I feel like. Under the question, how do I not look like I'm in costume? If you are wearing vintage hair, vintage makeup, and a vintage dress, even if it's a reproduction vintage dress, you will look like you're in costume. You will. There is no way around it. You will look as if you are going to a costume party. Even if you're wearing modern pieces with vintage hair and flower in your hair and vintage styled makeup, you may be asked, are you going to a costume party? My entire family was asked this when we were in Memphis recently, and no one was wearing anything vintage. We just, you know, we were dressed like we always dress, but we were asked if we were going to a Roaring Twenties party, which really struck me as funny. But, you know, you will probably stand out, and you will probably be asked if you are in costume. I'm going to link an article below. Doris Mayday was interviewed about that, and I want y'all to read it. What if people look at me? I get this question all the time. This is one of the comments that gets me so tickled. Okay, somebody say, I get these comments all the time, and if you were one of the ones that made this comment, I'm going to say it again. I'm going to respond to you the same way hopefully I responded then. You have to feel comfortable how you look. If you feel that you stand out too much, then perhaps you should tone it down and not wear vintage styling, because you're going to get stared at. It's not anything that's not the norm gets attention. Just like that guy that's walking down the aisle at Walmart in his huge, huge stovepipe baggy pants and his long black hair and his eyeliner with his tattoos up both sides gets stared at. So will the nicely dressed girl in the vintage 1950s style dress and the pin curls and the flower clip. She's going to get stared at too. It's just about differences. If you're dressed differently, you will get stared at. It's up to you to decide whether it's a bad thing or a good thing to be stared at. Or I couldn't possibly get away with that at my job or where I live. First of all, the where I live comment, I'm assuming you mean in a small town, because in big cities, I can't imagine why anyone would say that. I am from a town with only about 1,000 people. Not now, but where I lived before. When I went to the grocery store, or whenever I was out and I came home and I went to the store on the way home, there was no one else that I knew of in town that dressed that way. But that doesn't mean that you don't get away with it. There's nothing illegal about it. You're getting away with it. Remember that. Secondly, I can't get away with that where I work. I don't know why you wouldn't get away with wearing something classically tailored and your hair in a nice pin curled design. as long as you're dressed conservatively, try it and see what happens when you go to work dressed like that. I think you'd be surprised. That's all I'm going to say about it. So that's how my style developed, and that's what I think about everyday vintage fashion. And check out the links below.